That in mind, I sat down yesterday with Hillary Clinton right here in our studio, and I began by asking her about the threat that Bernie Sanders poses to her candidacy. Is Bernie Sanders now helping Donald Trump?
Oh, I don't think so. I think that Senator Sanders has every right to finish off his campaign however he chooses. I do think there will then be the obvious need for us to unify the party. I faced the same challenge in 2008. I will certainly do my part, reaching out to Senator Sanders, reaching out to his supporters, and I expect him to do his. And he said about a week ago he was going to spend 7 days a week trying to defeat Donald Trump, and I believe that's the case.
You know, earlier this week, you just said emphatically, look, I'm going to be the nominee.
Right.
Just about 10 days earlier, you weren't ready to say that. The only thing that has changed is you narrowly won Kentucky. Why are you comfortable saying, I'm going to be the nominee, and why did you think it was important to actually verbalize that? Well,
I think that having gone through 2008, as I did, it was much closer between then Senator Obama and myself in 2008. I actually won 9 of the last 12 contests in 2008, including Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, other states. And I wanted to make it clear that I know what this feels like, having lived through it. I have 3 million more votes. In the case of Senator Obama and myself, it was neck and neck in the popular vote. I have far more pledged delegates. It was much closer between me and Senator Obama. And I am going to be the nominee. And I want to spend a lot of my time, as you've seen me do, really taking on Trump, because I find what he says, the kind of candidacy he's presenting, to pose a danger to our country.
You know, it's interesting, though. He is making a case, Bernie Sanders is, Senator Sanders, to superdelegates. And there's another memo they've put out this weekend, just showing how much stronger he is against Donald Trump than you are. Our own poll, he's got a 15-point lead over Trump. You have a 3-point lead over Trump. You made an electability case 7 days before the final day of the primary season to superdelegates back in 2008. Why shouldn't superdelegates, you wanted them to listen to your argument 8 years ago, why shouldn't superdelegates listen to the Bernie Sanders argument and say, you know what, maybe he is more likable?
Well, first of all, people have voted for me overwhelmingly in the Democratic primary process, and that is absolutely clear and very different from where we were in 2008. I could make the case, which I did, that I was actually slightly ahead in the popular vote when we ended that primary, but I was behind in the pledged delegates. It's also fair to say that I have been vetted and tested, and I think that that puts me in a very strong position.
You don't think Bernie Sanders has been vetted? You don't think this one long year of campaign, your campaign against him, has vetted him?
Let me say that I don't think he's had a single negative ad ever run against him. And that's fine. But we know what we're going into, and we understand what it's going to take to win in the fall. And finally, I would say that, you know, polls this far out mean nothing. They certainly mean nothing to me. And I think if people go back and look, they really mean nothing in terms of analyzing what's going to happen in the fall.
Do you think this lead for Sanders is an illusion a little bit?
I'll let others speak to that. I just think that I'm in a much stronger position, have been, and the voters who have turned out and given me 3 million more votes believe that as well.
It does seem he has some specific demands that he would like to see met at the convention if he's not going to be the nominee. Some of them include perhaps getting rid of superdelegates, creating a rule that says, you know what, all primary contests should be open to independents, things like that. Are you okay with those, if that's what it takes to get him on board? To say, okay, we'll do this on the platform. We'll do this going forward. We'll change the rules. We'll change the platform. What do you say?
Well, certainly we're going to talk with him when he's ready to talk and listen to him. And we will take into account what he is asking for. I think that's part of the process.
How about getting rid of superdelegates? Would you be in favor of that?
I think we have to. I'm not going to negotiate with him today on your show. I'm going to say when it's time, I am reaching out to do my part to try to unify the party. I expect him to do the same. I did that when I lost a much closer race to Senator Obama, because I knew that whatever our differences were, just as whatever our differences are between me and Senator Sanders, they pale in comparison to Donald Trump and the Republicans. And I think most of Senator Sanders' supporters understand that as well.
would you? He's accepted an invitation to debate in California before the California primary. Have you thought about accepting that invitation?
You know, we'll consider it, but I'm really
So
focused.
you're not ruling it out yet?
I haven't thought about it. We'll consider it, but I think what's important is we're not going to let, at least my campaign, is not going to let Donald Trump try to normalize himself in this period between.
So you think
now
a competitive
and,
Democratic primary is doing nothing but helping Donald Trump right now?
No, I didn't say that. I said that if we don't respond to Donald Trump, which I am doing, as you have seen, I've said he was unqualified to be president. I believe that deeply. I am going to keep focused on Donald Trump because I will be the nominee. I will be running against Donald Trump in the fall. And I do not want Americans and, you know, good thinking Republicans as well as Democrats and independents to start to believe that this is a normal candidacy. It isn't. What he is advocating, look what he's done this past week, you know, attacking our closest ally, England, heaping praise on a dangerous dictator in North Korea, reiterating his call to pull out of NATO, our strong military alliance, talking about letting other countries have nuclear weapons, advocating a return to torture, and even murdering the families of suspected terrorists. That is beyond the pale, and it poses immediate dangers. I go around the country, Chuck, all the time, and in my events in the last few weeks, I've had Republicans coming to tell me they are supporting me. They have different reasons. For a lot of women, it's the divisive, demeaning comments that Donald Trump has made about women. For others, a businessman just told me yesterday in Texas, he said, I'm a Republican. I've always voted Republican. I'm here giving you money, supporting you, because I do business all over the world, and I'm watching what this Trump effect is doing to our standing in the world.
You know, it's interesting, though, there's a lot of Democrats that are quietly nervous that your candidacy isn't responding to what the populace wants right now, right? The populace wants major change. The populace wants major shakeups. And in some ways, your campaign has been about you're going to build on the progress Barack Obama has made. That isn't what this electorate is saying. This electorate is saying they want major changes. We have our own poll. We asked them, do you want essentially testing your message versus testing his message, even if it comes with an unpredictability? And by 10 points, they want the unpredictability. That's how fed up they are. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I have 2 million more votes than Donald Trump. And I think voters, as opposed to, you know, the kind of back and forth in the public arena, when voters show up to vote, they take that vote seriously. And yes, I know he has a plurality of Republicans who have voted for him. But I think in the course of this campaign, we are going to demonstrate he has no ideas. There's no evidence he has any ideas about making America great, as he advertises. He seems to be particularly focused on making himself appear great. And as we go through this campaign, we're going to be demonstrating the hollowness of his rhetoric and the danger of a lot of what he has said. And I am very confident that the American people are going to want change. Every election is about the future. I've laid out very positive approaches. I'm not running for anybody's third term. I'm running for my first term, but I also want to do what works. My goal is to produce positive results for the American people, more good jobs, rising incomes, the kinds of tangible progress that I think people are yearning for and they need and deserve to see.
You know, Bernie Sanders has been talking about a political revolution, a future you can believe in. Obviously, Donald Trump with the Make America Great Again is one of these slogans that has taken off, for better or for worse. If you could sum up, what is the big idea of your candidacy?
Look, we are stronger together. We are stronger together in facing our internal challenges and our external ones. We are stronger together if we work to improve the economy, and that's going to mean trying to get the Republicans to do what will actually help produce more jobs, like we saw in the 1990s. We are stronger together when we have a bipartisan, even nonpartisan foreign policy that protects our country and that provides the kind of steady, strong, smart leadership that the rest of the world expects from us. And I know that you know, slogans come and go and all the rest of it. But when I look at where we are in our country together, we need to unify the country. We are stronger together when we act on a set of plans and priorities that will redound to the benefit of the American people.
How do you, How do you do it? You're a polarizing figure right now in American politics. You have an unfavorable rating that is almost as high as Donald Trump's. How do you do it?
Well, it's not as high, and
No, it's not, but it's pretty, but it's
well,
it's
look,
pretty high.
but he's gotten
pretty polarizing. He's polarizing.
Well,
how do you do it if you're elected president? This is
just
a polarized country.
Just the way I did it when I was First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State. When I have these jobs, Chuck, I actually get things done, and I work with people across the aisle. Honestly, I worked with Republicans in the 90s to create the Children's Health Insurance Program. I worked with Tom DeLay, the hammer in the House, to reform adoption and foster care. I worked with practically every Republican, and I worked as Secretary of State to get things done, to reduce nuclear weapons, for example, between Russia and myself. So I have a track record, and I'm going to remind people of that because it's not just rhetoric for me. When I was Secretary of State, I had a very high approval rating, as you can go back and check, because I was doing a job that people could see. When I get into the arena, and all of the negativity that's been thrown at me for 25 years is recycled and put out there, I know I've got work to do, but I'm very confident that it's going to be successful.
I know we're over, but I got a couple more questions. Number one, you said Bill Clinton, you were going to basically put him in charge of getting this economy going again. Can you what does that mean?
Well, what I said in Kentucky and West Virginia is that there are parts of our country that have been left out and left behind for too long. And I am going to ask my husband, who has a great track record in creating jobs, putting people to work, revitalizing communities, to be in an advisory role, working with me, working with our cabinet, to try to figure out what we can do. You know, every First Lady has taken on special projects, and I think my husband's understanding of how to get this economy moving in places that have been left behind will be incredibly valuable.
Both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders have been running against some of the economic policies of the 90s. Trade, Wall Street deregulation, things like that. Does that concern you?
Well, they're not running against 23 million new jobs. They're not running against incomes going up for every American, not just those at the top. They're not running against median family income going up 17%, and for African Americans, 33%, and lifting more people out of poverty and ending up with a balanced budget and a surplus. Now, I have said I want to renegotiate NAFTA. I voted against the only multinational trade deal that came before me when I was in the Senate. I have stated my opposition to the Trans-Pacific Partnership based on what it was negotiated to include. So I'm more than happy to take on that argument. But I ask people, when they criticize the 90s, what do they criticize, the peace or the prosperity? Because I think a lot of Americans, as I travel around the country, think of that as being a time when they thought they were getting ahead. Then we ran smack dab into the failed Republican economic policies.
And I know you're not going to reveal how you're vetting for a running mate, but you saw this process up close with Al Gore. What did you learn from that process of your husband picking Al Gore and the governing structure that he was involved in that you're going to use going forward?
The most important thing is to pick someone who you have absolute confidence in can be president. That's more important than any characteristic. And then someone you can work with, someone that you believe will be a good partner, not just to you, but to the rest of the government, someone who can go around the country, as Joe Biden has done very well, in explaining and advocating for the policies of the Obama administration.
Mark Cuban.
Yes.
Did an interview with him earlier. He expressed serious interest. If you called him up and said, I want to vet you to be my running mate, he'd listen. What do you say to that?
I think we should look widely and broadly. It's not just people in elective office. It is successful business people. I am very interested in that, and I appreciate his openness to it. I think that
you do plan on having people that maybe have never served in elected office that you're going to
I am absolutely intending to look far and wide, and I think that is the best way to find somebody who can really capture what's needed in the country. And business people have, especially successful business people who are really successful as opposed to pretend successful, I think have a lot to offer.
Pretend successful. You don't think, is there anything Donald Trump's done that you think should be praised?
I think he needs to release his tax returns. The only two we have show that he hasn't paid a penny in taxes. And yet he goes around talking about Make America Great. You know, that means paying for our military, That means paying for our roads. That means paying for the VA. That means a lot of things. And if you've got someone running for president who's afraid to release his tax returns because it will expose the fact that he pays no federal income tax, I think that's a big problem.
But my question was, there's nothing about his background that is praiseworthy?
We'll find out, because we have to get below the hype. We have to find what the reality is.
And you don't feel like you know that?
I don't think the country knows it.
But do you?
I think that we're beginning to find out, but I don't think we know enough, and that's why he should release his tax returns.
All right.
Prove that he actually has the level of success he claims to have.
Madam Secretary, I got to leave it there.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming on. We'll see you soon.
Glad to be here.
You got it. Thanks.